She survived more royal scandals than any woman alive. Affairs, financial ruin, brutal headlines, and public disgrace. And yet, every single time they thought she was finished. She smiled, stood up, and walked back into the spotlight. But not this time. This time, Sarah Ferguson isn't standing back up. She's standing alone. And she's not smiling. Because now she has nothing left to protect. No titles, no alliances, no illusions, and that makes her the most dangerous woman in the royal orbit. For years, she watched silently as Meghan Markle built her legacy. Carefully crafted interviews, magazine covers, soft-lit Netflix specials, all telling one story. A story of a woman who married into royalty, faced cruelty, and walked away stronger. But while Meghan built her version of the truth, Fergie was watching, and remembering, and collecting. What the world saw was an actress turned duchess rising into history. What Sarah Ferguson saw was something very different. And now she's ready to speak, to tell everything Meghan never wanted out. Not out of revenge, not for money, but because for the first time in decades, no one can stop her. And when Fergie speaks, people listen. Because this isn't a whisper behind palace walls, it's a full-throated reckoning that threatens to tear down the very image Meghan spent years building. The stage is quiet, the world is watching, and Sarah Ferguson is finally breaking her silence. But what exactly does she know? And why are insiders warning that if she tells the truth, Meghan's entire story could collapse? The answers begin long before Harry, long before the palace, long before the world even knew her name. And that's where we begin next. Before she ever stepped into Kensington Palace, Meghan Markle was already stepping into rooms most people never see. Rooms filled with billionaires, politicians, socialites, and royal watchers who operated just outside the spotlight. And at the center of that world stood someone Sarah Ferguson knew very well, Marcus Anderson. He wasn't just a friend, he was a gatekeeper. A high-ranking figure at Soho House, the elite club that shaped reputations and filtered who belonged. Marcus didn't just know people, he connected them. And through him, Meghan was introduced to powerful circles long before she met Harry. Private dinners, influencer-filled parties, quiet jet-setting to exclusive weddings. Meghan was being placed deliberately into the upper crust of international society. This wasn't luck, it was orchestration. There's a story that quietly followed her for years. Meghan flying to a Jamaican wedding on billionaire Ron Burkle's private jet, while Harry reportedly flew economy. That single detail tells a louder story, because when you arrive by private plane into a world that thrives on status, people like Sarah Ferguson notice. And she didn't forget. Fergie saw the people who opened those doors. She saw the strategy. She saw the rise, and she saw the cracks forming in Meghan's story before the cameras ever turned on. To the public, Meghan was a fresh face entering an ancient institution. But to those who knew the real game, she was already playing it. And no one played it longer than Fergie. She knew Meghan's path wasn't as innocent or as sudden as it seemed. And that version of Meghan, the version before the royal image, before the Netflix glow, is the version Sarah Ferguson can write about, in brutal detail. And what she reveals next is where the tension truly begins. At first, everything seemed cordial. Sarah Ferguson's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, knew what it meant to grow up under a microscope. They had lived it. Royal expectations, relentless judgment, and the balancing act of being both inside and outside the monarchy. So when Meghan Markle entered that world, they didn't treat her like an outsider. They treated her like one of them. They smiled. They welcomed her. They shared the jokes only royals get. But slowly, something shifted. Sources say Meghan began to pull back, but not gently, not gradually. She distanced herself from the York sisters with sharp, deliberate moves. The warm chats turned cold. Invitations went unanswered, and the sense of camaraderie was replaced with something brittle and calculated. The York sisters, born into a system of status and scandal, could sense it instantly. Meghan no longer saw them as equals, not after marrying Harry, not after claiming the spotlight. To Meghan, they were now reminders of the mess she wanted to escape, tabloid targets with complicated parents and less public glamour. And Sarah Ferguson felt the sting, because this wasn't just a drift, it was a quiet dismissal. Meghan, the once grateful newcomer, now acted as if she had outgrown the very people who had tried to make her feel at home. That attitude didn't just create tension, it ignited quiet resentment among the sisters, among their friends, and deep within their mother. It didn't explode, it simmered. But the day would come when that simmering would boil over. And when Meghan ghosted Fergie completely, that silence would echo louder than any insult. That's next. It wasn't a scandal that broke the relationship. It wasn't a headline, not a fight, not even a whisper through the tabloids. It was silence. According to insiders close to the York Circle, Sarah Ferguson reached out to Meghan Markle. One last time. Not as a royal, not as an ally, just as a woman who had seen what Meghan was facing and wanted to offer support. No cameras, no media, just a private message, a call for connection, a hand extended. And Meghan never answered. No reply, no return call, no explanation, nothing. She vanished, deliberately, coldly. To some, it might seem like a boundary, a decision to disengage, but in royal circles, especially with someone like Fergie, it was a declaration. Meghan hadn't just walked away from the friendship, she had drawn a line through it. Sources say it wasn't just that Meghan wanted distance, it was why she wanted it. Fergie was messy, tied to Prince Andrew, known for scandal, linked to an older, more chaotic era of the monarchy. She didn't fit the image Meghan was curating, a polished, modern, glossy brand of royalty with clean edges and powerful press. Fergie was too real, too raw, too complicated. And in Meghan's world, there was no room for that. But in cutting Fergie off, Meghan made a critical mistake. Because Sarah Ferguson isn't just a cast-off duchess. She's a survivor, a witness, a woman who knows exactly who opened the doors that Meghan walked through, who was in the rooms, and what was said when the cameras were off. Ghosting a woman like that isn't just rude, it's dangerous. And it was that moment of silence, sharp, cold, final, that turned Fergie from a woman looking to support into a woman ready to speak. And the secrets she's holding? They're not rumors, they're history. When people hear the words tell all, they think of soft gossip, a few juicy anecdotes, a scandalous headline or two. But what Sarah Ferguson is preparing is not a gossip column, it's a scalpel. Because what she knows, what she's lived, could shatter the royal fairy tale Meghan worked so hard to sell. Let's start with the past. Not just any past, Meghan's past, before Harry, before the wedding, before the carefully curated royal narrative. According to insiders, Fergie knows about Meghan's quiet navigation of elite social circles, the high-end parties, the exclusive dinners, the private introductions. None of it illegal, none of it criminal, but all of it far from the humble beginnings Meghan often highlighted. And then there's the more personal story, one that has raised eyebrows behind palace doors for years. Multiple sources suggest Meghan, long before meeting Harry, allegedly showed interest in Prince Andrew. Not the romantic royal fairy tale anyone expected, and certainly not one Meghan would want discussed now. Fergie, deeply entangled with Andrew's life at the time, reportedly shut it down fast. And that moment, it left a scar. Not one you see in public, but one that lingered quietly beneath every interaction that followed. There's more. Fergie also witnessed the strange circumstances behind Meghan's infamous private jet trips, like flying on billionaire Ron Burkle's plane to a Jamaican wedding while Harry took commercial. She reportedly knows why Meghan banned Harry's longtime friend Tom Inskip from the wedding. Sources say he knew too much about who Meghan was before the crown. Add it all up, and what you have isn't just dirt. You have a weapon. A weapon Fergie has held on to in silence, until now. Because when a woman like Fergie has nothing left to lose, she doesn't fire warning shots. She writes books. And the palace? They've noticed. Something strange is happening inside Buckingham Palace. It's not outrage, not denial, not royal statements in defense of Meghan Markle. It's silence. And to those who understand the institution, it's the most ominous sign of all. Because silence in royal politics is never about peace, it's about calculation. According to those close to the crown, King Charles is watching Sarah Ferguson very closely. Not because he's angry, but because he understands exactly how dangerous she is. A woman who has seen too much, heard too much, and survived enough to know which threads to pull to unravel the whole system. Insiders say Charles is even willing to negotiate, behind closed doors, to soften Fergie, to offer her just enough recognition, just enough inclusion to keep the pen out of her hand. Because if she turns that pen toward the palace, it's not just Meghan who suffers. It's him. But Prince William plays a different game. He doesn't offer olive branches. He doesn't panic. He doesn't bend. Because unlike the rest, William has nothing to fear from Fergie's memories. His record is clean, his alliances are solid, his position is unshakable. And that creates tension behind palace gates. Tension Meghan never expected. Because if a storm must be allowed to pass, if a reputation must fall to protect the family, there is one name at the top of the list. It's not Charles, not Camilla, not William. It's Meghan, the outsider, the one who walked away, the one the institution no longer needs. And if Fergie becomes the voice that brings her down, don't expect the palace to stop it. They might just let it happen. Because their silence? It's not mercy, it's strategy. Meghan Markle didn't just marry into royalty. She mastered the art of image. A self-made woman, a graceful outsider, a trailblazer pushing against outdated institutions. That was the brand. That was the story the world was sold. But Sarah Ferguson holds the version that wasn't polished, the one with jagged edges. And that version is lethal. Because Meghan's power isn't just in her marriage or her title, it's in her narrative. Her control over how she's seen, the survivor, the victim, the reinvented royal. But every story has a weak point, and Fergie knows exactly where to aim. She knows the dinner tables, the whispered introductions, the real reasons certain people were pushed out of the wedding list, the contradictions between public statements and private moves. This isn't tabloid fodder. This is the kind of truth that sticks, that redefines perception, that follows someone forever. And Meghan, she's built everything on perception. Her Netflix deal, her speaking events, her brand partnerships, her public sympathy. All of it rests on the version of herself she carefully presented to the world. But Sarah Ferguson isn't bound by NDAs or media contracts. She's not a working royal. She has no official duties to protect. And she's not afraid of becoming a villain in someone else's documentary. That's why this story matters. Because Fergie isn't speaking to damage Meghan's brand. She's speaking because for the first time in decades, she can. And when someone with nothing left to lose starts talking, the truth doesn't trickle out. It floods. And next, that storm breaks. Picture it, a quiet morning in Montecito. The sun rising over California hills. Meghan walking through her peaceful home, perhaps sipping tea, believing the storm has passed. The headlines have calmed. The critics moved on, the past neatly folded behind her. But far across the ocean, in a historic estate filled with dust-covered memories, something stirs. Sarah Ferguson is writing. Not out of vengeance, not for fame, but because for the first time in decades, she's free to. Free to pull back the curtain. Free to describe what the cameras never caught. Free to expose the moments that built and broke an entire royal narrative. She's not just telling stories. She's challenging a myth. Because for all the scandals Meghan escaped, for all the reinventions, there's one person she didn't see coming. A woman she underestimated. A woman who watched it all unfold. A woman who, despite the scandals, the shame, the exile, survived. And now, with no throne to serve, no image to protect, and no future in the royal machine, Sarah Ferguson has become the one thing Meghan Markle cannot outrun. A voice with receipts. This isn't just about the past, it's about legacy. About who controls the truth. And the truth? It's gathering like thunder. Because Sarah Ferguson doesn't just hold embarrassing details. She holds the power to rewrite the entire version of Meghan the world believes in. And Meghan? She has everything to lose. As the silence breaks and the storm begins, one question echoes louder than all the rest. What happens when the woman you ghosted becomes the one person who can destroy your legacy? The world is about to find out.